You are qualified and called no matter who you are, where you're at, what your background is. God has a calling on your life. It's time to live it out. Hello, ladies and gents, and welcome to this week's episode of the Bought and Beloved podcast. As always, it's your girl, Kirby Kelly, back at it again with another podcast and with another guest. Y'all probably already know this person already if you've been watching and listening to the podcast, or if you've just been following me on social media, because this is one of my longest lasting standing friends that I've been doing ministry with, and it is none other than Jordan Whitmer. Jordan, how are you doing?
Hello, Kirby. So good to be back on Bought and Beloved, and excited for our conversation. This is so fun.
Me too. Can you give everybody who doesn't know you just a quick little synopsis of who you are and what you do?
Yeah. I'm my name's Jordan Whitmer, 26 years old. I'm the founder and global director of the How to Life movement ministry, which helps teens and young adults all throughout the USA and around the world. It's been over 29 states and 12 countries now that we've helped young people to reach their friends for Jesus through student-led youth rallies and events, and in addition to that, just really creating and fostering a global community of young leaders who want to reach the next generation, who are passionate about the Great Commission, seeing the nations come to know the Lord, and especially when it comes to Gen Z. So that's my heart and my passion. I recently relocated to the New York City area, so thrilled to be in the biggest city in the nation, and in an area that really has a big need there. So I'm getting more and more locally involved there, in addition to national and global things. But yeah, that's a little bit.
I think that New York is the best place for an evangelist to go, because in the song New York, New York, it starts by saying, "Start spreading the news."
Yes.
What news? The good news.
Yes.
Right? I don't think that's what Frank Sinatra meant, but I hope
that's
so.
good.
We'll find out. But today we're talking about what it means to be qualified. And I think that there are a lot of people out there, whether they are young, whether they are old, no matter what the background is or whatever their context and situation is, even country, because this is a global podcast. I have people listening from all over the world who might feel insignificant when it comes to, am I even qualified to do what God has called me to do? Whether they've stepped into their calling and they're already doing it, and just comparison has plagued them, and insignificant has plagued them, or maybe they haven't even taken that first step into doing what God has called them to do, simply out of that fear and just automatically disqualifying themselves. And that's who I really want to speak to today. And I know that you've been doing ministry since you were very young. I mean, How to Life, you started this movement and this dream at a very young age. And so I'm even just wondering with you, has there been any point, whether it was at the very beginning or even during your ministry, where that was something that you wrestled with or you struggled with? I mean, maybe it has, maybe it hasn't, but I'm just wondering, has that been something that you've had to navigate or see people in How to Life navigate?
Yeah. I mean, when you're involved in Christian ministry and serving Jesus, it's obviously thrilling. And when we get into it, most people, I mean, Jesus calls it your first love, and the first love is Jesus. And the reason that any of us get into ministry, at least the right intention to get into ministry, always is and should be, it's out of our love for the Lord, out of obedience to Him, looking to see His kingdom come in this world, to see the lost find hope and come to know Him and have their life transformed by Him. It's seeing people who maybe are following Jesus, but are trying to figure out what that looks like for them, just get reinvigorated in that heart and see revival happen. And it's evangelism, it's discipleship, which is versus reaching people who don't know Jesus, helping them find Him. The other is helping people become more like Jesus. Discipleship, it's a journey for everyone. And those are so important. That's what ministry is. It's those things. And we get into this with a desire to want to impact lives and touch people's lives in an eternal way, in a spiritual way. It's a ministry to souls. It's a ministry to hearts. And that's why we get into this. And now the enemy doesn't like that we do that. So we often all come under attack pretty quickly in this sort of journey. And it's just like, well, can I do this? And how am I meant to be in all this? And so that's where one of the biggest lies that people of every generation throughout all of history
Mm-hmm.
that have been reckoning and wrestling with how to get involved with God's work deal with is that dynamic of inadequacy. Uh, I'm not worthy to do this, and it's a massive lie from the enemy that comes to us, and we've got to say no, that's a lie, and say I am able to do this, but not because of who we are,
Mm-hmm.
but because of who God is, who God has made us to be, the fact that we literally have God's Spirit in us as believers, and we have that power to be able to impact lives. So, me personally, anytime I drift at all in terms of mission,
Mm-hmm.
I always try to just, you bring it back to prayer, you bring it back to recalibrating, why am I in this in the first place, and bring it back to the first love. And when you do that, you will always be able to at least be kind of get pointed in the right direction again. And it's so important. And certainly with How to Life movement, we work with young people all over the world who often do not believe at first that they could do really big things for God. They see everyone else, oh, that looks cool and this and that. And although at the end of the day, it is God working through with us, and it's not our job to figure it all out. It is our job to be obedient, to step out. And so when it comes to inadequacy, I believe that the more that we continue to bring it back to God, trust Him, rely on Him, give it to Him, and then say, "Here am I, Lord, send me," just like Isaiah did at the end of Isaiah 6. And it's amazing to see what God can do. And when we remember that we're serving a big God, and that's just the beauty of this work that we get to do.
Yeah. I mean, the beauty of it is like this is the greatest partnership that we get to enter into, that we are not called to do this thing alone in and of ourselves, in and of our own power and
Mm,
qualifications and strengths and connections or whatever it could be that could equate to whatever measure of success that
mm,
we might have for what
sure,
it looks
sure.
like to make a difference. Like I think that we can get so caught up on the numbers and the measurables, and this is what success looks like. This is what it looks like to make an impact. We just so heavily focus on certain things where God in God's world, like if we're talking about like girl math, we're talking about God math, he goes after the one.
Mm,
He goes after the one sheep. Like he has his 99 and he cares about his 99, of course, but it's like God is after that one sheep. And how many of us are so focused on making a 99 impact when God might just be calling you to make a one impact?
mm, mm.
Because truthfully, God is after the single person. God cares about every single person. And I think that for some of us who might feel disqualified, maybe it is because of the things that we bring to the table, or the lack of things that we bring to the table, or because of our past. God, I struggled with these things. God, I've made these mistakes. Like I'm not worthy. You
Yeah,
mentioned that.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not worthy. But it's like I read scripture and it's like, how many of these people were quote unquote worthy?
yeah,
Were
yeah.
the perfect person? There's only one perfect person, and that's Christ. Christ himself. He is the only one who is worthy in all things, in all ways.
Mm,
But he loves his people and he sees the value in every single soul that he has created, every single person he has created. And as much as he wants every soul to be reconciled unto him, he also desires that we would be a part of that process. And I think that
mm,
that is such a beautiful gift, that as much as God is God, this transcendent being that is above all and greater than and absolutely awesome and incredible, he's also immanent. He is close. He is personal. He wants to be a part of the process. And he's willing to partner with us in even preparing us for the things that we're called to do. Because I know for me, I'm the type of person that's like, I'm a high achieving person. And as much as I hate to admit or kind of refuse to admit that I want to do everything perfectly, I want to do everything perfectly. I never want to miss the mark in anything that I do. And sometimes that just leaves me to not even attempt to do certain things because I'm afraid of missing the mark and not getting it right and just being insignificant in my calling. And I think that that's just a big hurdle a lot of people need to overcome, is knowing that we might not get it right every single time. And in and of ourselves, we might not get it right every single time. And that's why we need to rely on the Lord. That's why we need to partner with God, because He's going to steer us in the right direction. He's going to give us the conviction and the clarity of where to go, what to do, what not to do. Because ministry and calling is partnership with God. We can't do it apart from Him. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. There's a Bible passage that comes to mind with this topic of inadequacy. I talk about it a lot. My grandpa Ron shares about this a lot. We love this passage because it is the best passage about inadequacy, I believe, and it's just Exodus 3 with 99% sure, but Moses in the burning bush. You get this experience of where Moses is in the wilderness. It's crazy times. The Hebrew people are in bondage in Egypt, and Moses is out in the wilderness. He got married and all these things, started a family, and for all reasons, it seemed like he was not going to be going back to Egypt at any point. And he'd grown up in Pharaoh's palace, had all these interesting qualifications, I guess, soon to become later on. But for him, he's just like, look, I don't want any of that. I'm in the wilderness. I'm away from that. Finds God at the burning bush, and God's like, take your sandals off, and God says, guess what? I am gonna rescue the Hebrew people, and Moses is like, yes,
my
people are being rescued, and God's like, yes, and I'm sending you. You're gonna lead them out of this. He's like, what? Wasn't. Could you do it any other way? Nope, you're my guy. And he's like, and then he starts giving all these excuses, and he sounds like Gen Z, but it's just all these things, these ways where people
lost half the audience.
yeah, and making excuses, doing all this stuff, and just all the angst of his time or whatever. But and he's just like, no, and then God finally is like, I'm going to do this because I am who I am, and it is not about who you are, it's who I am. And then he still complains. He's like, fine, your brother can go with you, since he's like, I can't speak, I stutter, and he did, but he's like, your brother can go with you. And then finally he's like, okay. And then Moses proceeds to return, teams up with his brother Aaron, and then you get the plagues and the stuff, and they're led out of Egypt, and it works. But man, did he complain about being just, and there's so many other people though in the Bible who are just so underqualified type people, whether it's, Gideon felt like, oh, I can't do this, and Samson, I can't do this. There's all these people, and Paul, I am the least of these, but eventually some of these folks, as soon as they came to the realization of it's not who they are, it's who God is, then great things happened. And
as you were talking, I was thinking kind of this double entendre of but God.
Yeah.
God will, it's like, Lord, I want to do all these amazing things. I want to do all these amazing things for you. I want to see all these amazing things. And then God calls us to step out in faith and be a part of it. And it's like, but God, but I can't speak, and I'm only 14 years old, and do you remember how I sinned with this thing? There's no way that I'm worthy. And it's like, but God, I can't. But then it's like, but God, it's literally God who's going to do the empowering. It's God who's going to open every door. It's the Lord. It's all the Lord. And I think it's easy to read these stories in Scripture, very real stories of very real people, and to automatically place them in this hero category. They are heroes of the faith in many ways, but it was because of God and what God did through them. I think the thing that was very significant about these people when it came to fulfilling great purposes and stepping out and seeing God move miraculously, the thing that these people had, apart from any skill set or qualification, was willingness. And I think that also partners with humility. You have to be able to humble yourself before the Lord, and I think recognize that God, you are so great, and not that I am any less of a person, but I'm thinking of myself less. There's a healthy degree to that, but then there's this willingness of, God, I'm gonna do it because I know that you are good, because I know that these people matter to you, because I know that only you can do it. I think if we can just narrow it down to even positioning ourselves and praying to the Lord that he would help us to have a humble heart and a willingness to do what he has called us to do, I think that's going to honestly build our confidence, not in and of ourselves and our own qualifications. God has gifted us in many ways that I think we can have a healthy degree of confidence in, but confidence in him.
Hmm.
Confidence in
Hmm.
him and his ability. And I want to share a verse before I get your thoughts on these things, because I know you probably have things you want to add to this.
Hmm.
But 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 26 through 29 says, "Brothers and sisters, think of what you were when you were called.
Hmm.
Not many of you were wise by human standards.
Hmm.
Not many were influential. Not many were of noble birth. But God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise.
Wow.
God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong."
Hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with wisdom and there's nothing wrong with strength, but this is talking about in and of oneself.
Hmm.
God chose the most unlikely of people. And I think this is a big narrative we see even in some of our favorite movies and our favorite books.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
like it was always the humble and the least expected and the least qualified by our standards
Hmm.
that great things were accomplished.
Hmm.
And that is because like it all points to the capital T truth of this is only possible by God.
Wow. Wow. No, I totally agree, Kirby. Just it is all God. He makes a way through. We just have to say yes. Like, here I am, Lord, send me. I love
Mm-hmm.
in Isaiah's having the greatest worship experience before the throne of the Lord.
Literally.
Holy, holy, holy. And which I think for a lot of young people who are like, I love worship, like worship is amazing. And worship leads to we're before the Lord. Then it leads to
Mm-hmm.
repentance. The whoa, who am me? I'm a person of unclean lips. And the
Mm-hmm.
charcoal comes and doesn't sound fun, but that's like the repentance.
It's this purification.
And then
Yeah.
so those happen. And then it's like, who can I send? Who will go for me?
Mm-hmm.
And Isaiah says, here I am, Lord, send me. And
Mm-hmm.
I think for so many of us, that needs to be our heart posture again and again and again.
Yeah.
And
An actual response, an
yeah,
actual reformation of like that something is going to change and I have to act and I have to do something.
yeah, no, absolutely. And God is at work in hearts and lives. And our job is just to be faithful and step
Mm-hmm.
up and let God work through us. He will get his work done, but we need to be obedient but man, there's no greater thrill than being able to be a part of God's work in some way in our world.
Absolutely. Well, as we wrap up this podcast, I know this is kind of a shorter episode, so if y'all are on your commute, you're probably already at work and you're just sitting in the car being like, I really don't want to go in. You got this. You got this, friend. I hope
Yes.
you have a great work day.
Yes.
Or whatever you're doing right now. Maybe you're folding laundry or making dinner. I don't know. But Jordan, do you just have any last encouragements for anybody who might be sitting in that place today of just, I'm insignificant. I want to make a difference, but I just don't know how. Like, why would God ever use a person like me? Do you just have any last encouragement for that person?
Yeah. In Ephesians, Paul talks about how God can and does immeasurably more than we can ask or imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And that means whatever you can imagine, like imagine the greatest possible thing that God could do. God can do more, and he does more, and he has been throughout history.
Mm-hmm.
And I take that verse to heart often, knowing that he's the one who's getting the victory, and it's not us and our insecurities or how small we are, how big we are, whatever. It is
Mm-hmm.
God who's at work through us, through just stepping up and trying to be faithful and seeking Him.
I love that. If you today just feel completely insecure, feel completely uncalled, maybe you know exactly what it is that God is calling you to do and what you have been positioned and primed for such a time as this, but you are just kind of like sitting on the sidelines like, coach, I've seen the other team and I'm afraid I'm going to get pummeled by them, or whatever it is, whether it's just your own, the things that you believe about yourself or the real spiritual powers and enemies that are out there. Know that there is no one like your God.
Hmm.
There is no one, no thing that compares to the greatness and the glory and the goodness of the God that we get to partner with. Honestly, when I look back on my own life and everything that God has called me to do, my 100% is like 1% compared to
Hmm.
God's 100%. Like, he is the one who carries the biggest burden of everything that I've ever been called to do. He has been the one who has opened every single heavy door that my little tiny hands could never pry open. Like, he
Hmm.
has been the one to bring about connections with people I otherwise would have never been able to meet, and so on and so forth.
Hmm.
It has all been God. Yes, there is a huge part, a significant part. We are all called to play. And I pray that he brings about an excitement and a gratitude within you to say yes and do what he's called you to do.
Hmm.
But recognize that in what you are called to do, you're not alone, that God will keep you secure, and that he will give you everything you need to do what you have been called to do. And even more, he's going to bring the things that he needs to bring so that he gets the glory, that he
Hmm.
gets the attention. We want these big testimonies of, oh my gosh, this amazing thing happened. Yeah, it's because God showed up and did this thing. There
Hmm.
has to be room for faith. There has to be room for, okay, God, I can't do this,
Hmm.
because he can do what only he can do, just like Jordan said. So be encouraged. I really hope this episode encourages you, and I hope you're even encouraged by my friend Jordan. And if you know anything about How to Life, everything that they're doing is super incredible. Where can people follow you? And if people feel called to make a difference, especially Gen Z, in their communities, in their nations, how can they maybe even take next steps to learn more about How to Life and potentially partnering with making a regional and a citywide and even a global impact for the gospel?
Yeah, yeah. Well, if you are Gen Z ages, or specifically a young person, so if
Yeah.
you're 16 to 22, upwards 23, 24, from anywhere in the world, and
Mhm.
you have a desire to want to reach your friends for Jesus, we're always taking applicants for people to reach out and get involved. At How to Life Movement on Instagram is just kind of our main landing page for so much. If you have
Mhm.
Instagram, if not, or either way, howtolifemovement.com. We have forms on
Mhm.
there you can fill out and send us a DM or a message or an email if you're like, hey, I'd love to learn more about this. I'd love to maybe do something in my community. And
Mhm.
we would love to talk with you. We have a global team of students from around the world who want to, that work in different places, different continents. And
Mhm.
we last year had 33 all student-led youth events across countries all over the world, 4
Wow.
continents, and all over the USA, who are being bold and looking to reach their communities. And so there's that How to Life movement, and would love to talk with you if you have a heart and you're in that age range. And then also the Gen Z Today podcast is my podcast. So
Yes, we recorded an episode on yours, so y'all have to cue that
yes,
up.
yes. Watch both of these. These are really fun,
Yes.
and check out our conversation there about the Great Commission,
Mhm.
and more episodes on there with other guests and people talking about living and leading for Jesus as members of Gen Z is our
Mhm.
theme, and it's on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and then TikToks and Reels and all that fun stuff. But yeah, and then I'm just Jordan Whitmer. If you want to reach out to me if any questions, but. Thank you for
Heck
having me,
yeah.
Kirby. And
Yeah,
this has
absolutely.
been really, really fun.
Yeah, well, you're a dear friend, and I love the work that you do. You are one of the most faithful people that I know. And I will say that to your face, and I will say that behind your back because
Thank
it's
you,
true.
Kirby.
You are faithful.
Thank you.
And the cool part is, hey, if you do want to get plugged in with How to Life, there could potentially already be something going on in your specific
Yeah,
nation
yeah.
or state. So you might not be as alone as you think you are, but you'll never know if you don't ask. So reach out to Jordan and his team and figure out what that looks like for you if you feel called to do so. And yeah, I love you guys. I hope that this episode was an encouragement, and I will see you next week for another episode here on Bought and Beloved. Bye.